But there's always the exception to the rule, right? So there always is going to be, one person who just really is.
You're tuned in to Leadership Beyond Burnout, where we encourage you and your organizations to heal, lead, and succeed. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson, and I want to welcome back all of my fired up friends. And if you are new here, listen up for some of the actionable strategies and steps and challenges that our guests are going to offer so that you can integrate them into your workplace and your life. Feel free to send questions to us or our guests during the show, or you can connect with us at drkimberlywilson.com. This episode is going to be sponsored today by Leadership and Resilience Consultants, where their mission is to create 100 healthy workplace cultures and to cure 5,500 women of burnout. Let's introduce today's guest. Today's guest is Trasetta Annelle Washington. She's the CEO of Profitable Productivity, LLC, an international speaker and a seasoned productivity coach, specializing in empowering women leaders. With over 25 years of experience in operations management, her mission is to help ambitious women overcome burnout and overwhelm by integrating intentional self-care practices into their lives. Trasetta's focus is on creating sustainable success for her clients. She is the creator of Visionary Action Plan Workbook and the Visionary Action Lab program, which provides comprehensive tools and strategies for turning ambitious visions into actionable plans for success. Her unique approach centers on combining time management strategies with holistic self-care practices, known as #balanced ambition. Trasetta's coaching empowers women to achieve their goals without sacrificing their health or well-being. Through tailored solutions and personalized guidance, she helps her clients increase productivity and thrive in all areas of their lives. Trasetta shares her expertise through a weekly 15-minute live stream on LinkedIn called Balanced Bites, where she offers practical insights and actionable tips for achieving work-life balance. In addition to her coaching work, Trasetta is the author of Positioning Yourself to Prosper: How to Create a Life of Abundance Through Purpose, and a contributing author for 2 anthologies, Fortitude, the Anthology for Overcomers, and The Undeniable Strength of a Woman. She continues to champion the power of daily actions to help others achieve their ambitions while also enjoying salsa and bachata dance, traveling, and personal development outside of her work. Trasetta is the proud mother of 1 adult daughter, Alexia, and an inspiring breast cancer survivor dedicated to mentoring and empowering others on their journey to success. And without further ado, let's bring Trasetta on.
Hi, Dr. Kimberly. How are you?
Welcome. I am great. I'm so excited to have you here and to share some of your strategies. And I want to orient everybody by having you share what you feel you do to bring healing to this world.
I would definitely say that it is to help others to choose themselves, right? Especially women. We are nurturers by nature, and oftentimes we are nurturing everyone else. We're taking care of our kids, we're taking care of our spouses. We might even have to care for our parents and our communities, our sisters, our friends. which leaves little time for us to care for ourselves. And I'm really trying to help women and leaders to see that when you take time out to focus on you and practice self-care, that you are better able to show up as the best version of you for everyone else. It's kind of like that adage says that you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, that's a very true statement, and so I really try to encourage women to take that time to fill their cup so that they can pour out of the abundance of their cup or the overflow from their cup.
Outstanding. Now, I one of the things I honed in on your bio was the fact that you are a breast cancer survivor. And
Mhm.
that's part of the reason that my whole company exists because I felt like my grandmother, through burnout, she took too long to discover that she had breast cancer and had to have a
Mm.
me and unfortunately passed. So I'd love for you to share your journey through recovery for that and what lessons you may have learned to guide you going forward.
It's funny because I actually affectionately refer to my breast cancer journey as my breast cancer wake up call. Um, like many, I was, I'm a very ambitious person. And like many, I had my nose to the grindstone, just kind of doing all the things and, in pursuit of success, in pursuit of my career goals and my personal goals. And getting that phone call that the results for my biopsy were um, positive for breast cancer really shook me up. It woke me up. And even though we caught it extremely early and my prognosis was really good, there wasn't concern about it being fatal. Yet at the same time, when you're being faced with your own mortality, it causes you
Yes.
to look at things differently. And I made a commitment to myself to start living life more boldly because I have been walking around, kind of um, somewhat in fear, not really stepping
Mm,
into the fullness of what I feel like I was put on this earth to do. And it liberated me to actually start to do some of those things and to step into it. And so it was it was a relatively long process. I don't know. I can't speak to anyone else's breast cancer journey. I can only speak to mine, but I ended up
mm.
having 5 surgeries in, or excuse me, 4 surgeries in 15 months.
Wow.
Um, and it took me probably 6 to 9 months before I really started kind of feeling more like myself again,
Hmm.
only to then have to turn around because, I was only 40 when I was diagnosed. I turned 41 a few weeks later, but I had to go through genetic testing and I came back positive for the BRCA2 gene, which is attached to 7 different types of cancer, breast cancer being one of them.
Mm.
And so the recommendation was that I have a complete hysterectomy, which I did not want to do.
Right.
And kind of put that off and put that off. And just when I was really getting to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good, I'm over all the surgeries and I'm starting to feel really good again. I ended up having to break down and go ahead and go through with that surgery. So and that added another
Yes.
year or so to kind of that comeback, if you will. So it wasn't an easy journey, but I did have support. And I think that's one of the key things to overcoming, burnout and to being resilient is having a system of support, having people who will be in your corner that you can lean on in
Right.
those times of challenges and getting ready to now fast forward this July will be 10 years
Wow.
and since that I've been cancer free and I'm super grateful for even though it was a difficult experience, I'm grateful for it because it birthed the woman that I am today.
Yes. What I wanted to highlight it in part of your journey as well, uh, is the fact that you at least took the time to go to the doctor, because so many of us don't do that. I just was talking to a client today. Uh, uh, there were all these things that she had to do for it, at least three medical things, but because things were going on with her kids and things were going on with her spouse, said, well, I'm just going to have to push it. My question was, well, what needs to happen in order for you to take care of yourself? Because it happens too often. So I applaud
Mhm.
you for taking the time to go to the doctor.
Yeah, it's funny because that's one of the things that I talk to my clients about is I kind of have one of those tough love conversations. And I will say, they talk about their kids or their spouses or whatever, their family, whoever it is that's in their life that's important to them. And I'm like, what would happen if you weren't here? Because that's the path that you're on,
Mm-hmm.
to have a heart attack or a stroke, or to just get some major illness that puts you down for a week or longer and prevents you from being able to work or be able to provide for them. What happens then?
Exactly. Exactly. And so I guess that's sort of what underpins your whole business model and the whole journey. Um, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge facing women in these positions right now?
Mm, that's a really good question. I think that it really comes down to having these dreams, goals, desires that they feel compelled to, yet also having that tug or that pull to be present for their families.
Mm,
And where is the balance? Like, how do I achieve the things that I desire to do without neglecting my family, or vice versa? How do I continue to be present for my family without sacrificing the success that I desire in my career or in my business? And
right.
it really is a dance. A lot of times we think when it comes to balance, we think of everything kind of being equal, and things aren't equal. Things aren't equal, and there are different times of life, different seasons of life, where one is going to receive more of your attention than the other, and that's perfectly okay. But it comes down to really sitting and taking time to establish some priorities, figure out what is important right now, and not being afraid to make the adjustment so that you can show up for the thing that is important.
Right. I know one of the things that I often find is that, well, everything's a priority. How how do I decide they're all important? Um, is there anything particular that you have to help them break past that? Because I know you must have heard that as well.
I hear it all the time. And one of the things that I say is that if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. We have a tendency to think that, well, here's an example. I love using this example of a concentrated cleaner. Oftentimes we think that or I should say, our focus is kind of like this concentrated cleaner, right? It's concentrated, right? And we call focus concentration, our ability to concentrate on something. And what happens is if you take that concentrated cleaner and dilute it by half, right? So you separate it into twos or into half and then add in water, you have now diluted it by 50%. Our focus is the same way. When you divide your focus between two different tasks or two different activities or two different priorities, then you have devoted half strength, half of your focus to two different things. Then if you add in a third, then you start talking about 33% of your focus is going to each of these things. And the more you start to add to your plate, the less strength, the less power you are bringing to what you are working on. And I think something else that really is helpful when I'm talking about prioritization with clients is that people often think, well, if I'm focusing on that, then I'm just letting everything else go by the wayside. That's not the case. One, you also have to remember that no matter when you shift and change one aspect of your life, it impacts all aspects of your life. It's like the pebble going into a still lake. There's the ripple effect. It starts to go out. Not only that, it just simply means that when you are looking at the time you have available versus what you have to get done, the things that you've identified as priorities, they get your time first. And then whatever time you have left, you can then devote to those other things. It's putting those big rocks onto your schedule first and then filling in the gaps with everything else. So you have time for everything, but you've gotten your most important priorities taken care of first.
Right. I think it's often so glorified about multitasking, and
Ooh, don't get me
that's a
started about
habit.
that one.
I've had to break myself of that habit because I find it's insane the amount of tabs that I have open right now because I'm still struggling with it. Because I'll have all these tabs open, and then I pick up my phone, and then I do, and it's like, well, what was that? What was I doing again?
Yeah. Yeah. So you probably already know this, but I'm going to say it anyway for the sake of the audience. Multitasking is actually a myth. There's no such thing as multitasking. What you are doing is called task switching. You are switching back and forth between two tasks or multiple tasks. And the research has spoken. Research shows that it actually ends up taking you at least twice as long to complete a task when you are going back and forth between multiples versus if you would just focus on the one task and bring it to completion before moving on to the next. And that's for a simple task. That's for something really, really small. The more complex the task, the more time it takes for you to acclimate to whatever task you switched between. So like, for example, we're having this conversation right now. If I was to pause and bring my attention to something over here on my other screen and start looking at that, then when I come back, I have to be like, okay, now where were we? I have to figure out where we were. And there's this attention residue that it takes time for you to reacclimate to whatever the thing is that you're going to work on. And so it just makes more sense for you to just focus on the single thing at and bring it to full completion or to a stopping point before you move on to the next.
Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly. And when you bring into that, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but when you bring that into relationships, whether that's at work or either personally, and you're trying to uh, multitask or task switching, it detracts from the quality of that relationship and actually begins to degrade the quality of that relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, honestly, I experienced a lot of frustration in my marriage, or I should say, my ex husband experienced a lot of frustration in our marriage because I was always, let me just finish this, let me just do this. Right. So, being so tied into doing other things, and then I would get wrapped, I'd finish whatever the thing was I was working on, but then I'd get pulled into, I'd get sidetracked into something else. And next thing that 5 or 10 minutes that I told him to give me grace for has turned into an hour or more. And now I haven't had the time for him and he feels neglected. And so, I have really started working personally. I have really been working on that for the last few years. When I go out to eat with friends, I don't have my phone out. My phone is in my purse because I don't want to be distracted by my phone. I don't want to see it light up if there's a notification. And another research, I'm a research
Hey.
Stats.
Please.
I'm a stats girly. I don't remember the actual statistic, but I do know that they say that research has shown that just simply, you don't have to be using your phone, but simply the fact that your phone is on the table
Remember that.
decreases the level of intimacy between you and the person that you are with. So actually putting your phone away and not having it out there on the table. Now, of course, there's some situations where it just makes sense for you to do that, right? If you have small
Right.
kids and they're, one is sick or you're expecting a call, then fine. But communicate that, right?
Hmm.
Communicate that to the person that you're with. And then, really, I've also been really leaning into the art of being present, being
Yes.
fully present in the moment, and just embracing it, because I was also like, I was a picture girly. So whenever I would have events, or go to an event or go on a trip or do something special, I would
Hmm.
be so wrapped up in trying to capture pictures,
Ah,
so wrapped up in trying to capture pictures to actually hold on to the moment, but I was missing. I was missing the experience altogether. So now I'm like, okay, let's snap a few pictures really quick. And then, before we get the day started, and then really immerse myself into whatever the activity is so that I can actually fully enjoy the experience, because the experience will last for a lifetime. But that
right.
picture may or may not make it out of my phone. And we
Right.
very, very seldom print pictures anymore. So the art, practicing the art of being present, as well, and the art of just being present with self.
And you
Many
you
people
had
can't do that.
you had me think about, I vividly recall, and you know who you are, being at a restaurant and me telling my friend, like, if you pick up that phone one more time,
Oh my
I'm
gosh!
leaving.
Whoever they are, it is not my fault. I did not tell her to say that. I am not responsible.
No, well, I mean, and it's quite annoying. And when you take, I'd love to hear your thoughts about when that task switching or the multitasking um, comes into the workplace and supervisor to staff or to a team, and what does that communicate?
So we had my last role before stepping into full-time entrepreneurship. My direct supervisor and she was the director, I was the assistant director. We had two very different working styles, and she was very much into, like multitasking and doing all the things. So she'd be on her phone. I really think she has undiagnosed ADD, because she was always flitting from one thing to another, which meant that she had to work into the evening and work on the weekends to actually get done the things that she needed to get done, because she was distracted by so many different things, and she was overwhelmed by email. It was like she had this thing where she's like, she didn't like to have a lot of emails in her inbox, and she had to catch up on emails, but she would
Mm,
she would always start at the bottom. She would never start at the top. And so there might have been other emails coming through that answered whatever, so she would be behind schedule
wow.
or behind the conversation. And so that kind of created a lot of uh, sticky situations within our department. But when you really allow, here's the thing, the tool that I like to recommend for managers: allow each employee to have designated focus time.
Mhm,
They can decide when that is for them, because each one of us has our own rhythm. Each one of
mhm.
us has our own kind of time of the day when we have the most energy and have the most focus. For me, it's earlier in the morning. So between like 9 and noon, that's like my on time. I don't want, I'm not going through my emails during those time periods. I'm not doing tasks that don't require a great deal of focus and concentration. I save that stuff for in the afternoon after lunch, when I don't have a whole lot of mental power left. Right. So if you allow your employees to have an hour or 2 hours where they can just have focus time, where they can close their door or be on do not disturb or whatever the case may be, it will, I guarantee you, it will increase their productivity, which will increase the productivity of the organization or department as a whole. So that would be my one big piece of advice. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. And so that would also require the manager or the executive to have trust in in their employees and in their staff to ensure that they're going to do that, because without that their staff to ensure that they're going to do that, because without that trust, it's going to be very difficult to accept that they are actually being productive. Have you seen that backfire where they say you can have those 1 or 2 hours to focus, but oh, here's an email, here's a ping, here's a knock at the door?
Um, I haven't personally experienced it, but I do know that there is that mindset is kind of there. My retort to that type of manager is to say, if you don't trust your employees, then why did you hire them?
Mm,
Why are they there?
mm,
Because that speaks to your leadership, not to the employee themselves.
right.
Because if they truly are an employee that you are unable to trust, then you need to do what you need to do to remove them from your department or from your organization, or reposition them
Or
so
mentor
that,
them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's a leadership issue the
Mm,
majority of the time. It's not an employee issue. There's always the exception to the rule, right? So there always is going to be, one person who just really is, they're just kind of the bad apple. But I don't even like to say that, because I just think that they're not aligned with whatever the role is. They just haven't found their place.
right.
When you find your place, that thing that fills you up, the thing that lights you on fire, you don't need someone to lord over you. You just naturally step into that. When you try to domineer and you try to micromanage your employees, you are setting yourself up to be left,
Mm,
because no one wants to be dominated.
no, no.
And there's a difference between managing and dominating.
I'd
We
love for
want,
you to share what that difference is.
well, okay. So dominating is kind of, think about it's a dictatorship, right?
Mhm,
You do what I say, what I say goes. And we're not cultivating a reciprocal relationship. However, when you are managing someone and leading them, you are leading them. It is a more of a coaching type role. So yes, you are the authority figure in the relationship. However, you create and cultivate a atmosphere or a culture within your team of democracy.
mm,
So you allow them to come with innovative ideas. You don't just, you don't trash their ideas. You don't tear them down or
right.
dismiss when they bring ideas to the table. You really cultivate that. You delegate and foster personal growth and development of your team members.
Yes.
Right? So you're really investing in the people who you are leading, as
Right.
opposed to just pointing, going, you go do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Right. And it feels like that often occurs either when the leader is insecure, um, immature, or in a very I'd also say possibly an extremely toxic workplace culture where it's very punitive
Hmm.
if any mistakes happen. I was in one of those ones, and the fear in on everybody's uh, body in management because any mistake.
Yeah.
I literally have saw people fired on the spot because of a minor error. So I could see them wanting to be over controlling in those type of situations.
Yeah. And um, I think that one of the challenges that we need to face in the workplace is when you are moving someone into their first leadership role into or to a new leadership role, there needs to be some mentorship there
Yes.
to help them to navigate this new role. I know the very first time that I was moved into a leadership role, I I didn't know what I was doing. I was good at what I did, right? Which is why I was promoted, right? I was good
Right.
at doing the work, but I didn't know what I was doing and I was not a great manager. I was not. I didn't I didn't trust my employees. I didn't micromanage them, but I didn't trust them and I was a little domineering. But over time, through different scenarios and situations, I learned how to better cultivate relationships with them and to get to the place to start investing, where I started investing into my teams. And I, consider myself now to be a really great leader. My last role, my employees, I gave them space to set when we met for our weekly meetings, they basically set the agenda. I didn't come in and be like, I need you to do this, and that. What's going on with this? I allowed them to set the tone for our meeting. So they came in and I'm like, okay, what's going on with you? What do you want to talk to me about? And so they would get through the things that they wanted to talk to me about. And oftentimes they would have already addressed the things that I wanted to know about before it got to my time.
Mm.
And then I would give them space. We would have time to talk about their professional development. They would have some sort of goal that they would be working on, and I'd check in and like, how are things going with whatever it is? Like I had one that she wanted to really polish her public speaking skills. And so I plugged her into Toastmasters within the university that we were working for. And so I'm like, how are things going? And she would update me and like, how can I support you in that? And then we would close out with, okay, these are the things that you are going to get that you owe me. These are the things that I owe you. When can you have those things to me by? And we would put dates and deadlines by each of those. And then I would say, I will have whatever my deliverables were to them, I would have deadlines for those. And then we each knew when we closed out that meeting exactly what we needed to get done in order to support one another. So it was a very collaborative type working relationship, and I think that we need more of that within companies and organizations. And then you won't have people who are stressed out and burned out and about ready to take their own lives because they just are overwhelmed in every single aspect of life.
Was it Liberty University? Was that the university where the young um, the African American, I forget what department, I want to say human resources, she took her life?
I don't remember the university, but yeah, that was gut wrenching, gut
Yes.
wrenching.
Yes. So what would that for let me stop. For the manager or leader who's sitting here listening and like, oh, I think I'm domineering. What what does that journey look like? Like what are the first few things that they could begin to do to either recover from being domineering or begin to make that journey towards more collaborative type of leadership style?
The first thing that I would say do is to start asking yourself some tough questions, right? Be introspective, whether it's sitting down and journaling or just, taking some time to, go for a walk or sit outside in nature and just really say, like, what are some areas where I feel like I could improve? What are some things that I don't necessarily care for about myself? And just really being curious and honest with the responses to said questions. Doing that, being introspective can really go a long way in allowing you to grow, stretch, and grow and develop as just as an individual, not just a leader, but just individually. Then don't be afraid to have conversations with your team members.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that I did. I was really wanting to up level my leader, even though I felt like I was a good leader. I wanted to up level my leadership skills. And so I went to each one of my employees. During our regular meeting, I had a conversation with them and I said, look, I'm really wanting to grow and develop as a leader and manager. What are some areas that you see in me where you feel like I could improve or what, and I was like, this is not, there's not going to be any retaliation. I'm not, this is not going anywhere. It's really and truly for my growth and development.
Mhm.
Um, and they were able to give me a little bit, of course, they were timid, not going to lie, right? They were timid at first and just kind of gave me some little things. But as they saw that I would implement the the little things that they said, then they
Mhm.
become more comfortable being transparent with me about things. Not only that, if I, handle things in a way that I don't think went well or that I upset them, I was
Right.
I would be reflect. I would go back and be like, well, how could I have done that differently? How could I have
Mhm.
handled that better? And I was never afraid to go to them and apologize. I lost, that was unprofessional, or I mean, I say that, but that didn't happen. Because that's
But
just
sometimes
that's
people
not
do have to say that.
right. But that's not necessarily my temperament. I did have one instance where I kind of blew up and had to, go and be like, and apologize. But that was with my direct supervisor. I had a situation. Oh, here's a good one. This wasn't specifically like manager to employee. This was a
Mm.
colleague situation. I was having a conversation with a colleague and said something negative about another colleague, and I felt bad about it later. So I called my colleague back into my office and the colleague that I spoke negatively about into my office. And I wanted to apologize to both of them in front of one another, you
Mhm.
know, and say, like, listen, I want earlier today I said XYZ about you and I feel horrible about that. So I want to apologize to the both of you because I said it to this person. It wasn't, I could have not apologized to the person I said it about and just had that conversation. But because of my level of integrity, I wanted to make sure that they both were in on that conversation. And so that don't be afraid to apologize. Hold yourself accountable for your actions.
Mhm.
And not only that, hold your team accountable and allow them, like, no, intervene, give them space, like, no, you didn't handle that properly. You need to go back and have a conversation with your colleague or with your supervisor, whoever it was, and make that right. And so kind of creating that type of culture, that environment within your organization.
Right. That allows for mistakes and reparative and restorative relationships where it's not like everything is destroyed now and there has to be this animosity that continues
Right.
for months and months on end and sometimes years. That's a horrible situation to be in the midst of in the workplace.
Yeah. And take the heat, right? Don't be afraid to take the heat for your team. If something goes wrong, you take the heat for your employee. That's your job. That's your role as a leader. You're responsible, even though it might have been a mistake of your employee. As the
Mhm.
leader, you are still ultimately responsible. So you take the heat for whatever that is. But when there is something good that is done, give them the praise.
Right.
give them the recognition. Well, that was so and so's idea, or it was because of so and so. You don't take the credit for yourself. You take all
And
the,
that goes a long way.
yeah, that, and that will help to cultivate that type of environment. You'll get more out of your employees. You'll get more out of people when you celebrate them, and then also not only that, but shield them from
Mm,
negative consequences.
I love that.
That's in personal relationships too.
I, I'm hoping that you could share with our audience some of the things that you've cultivated to stack your resilience.
We don't have that kind of time, but I'll share a few. I'll,
Your top few.
I'll definitely share a few things. So I am a woman of faith. So my spirituality is extremely important. That is my anchor. That is the
Mm,
thing that helps to keep me grounded. It's the thing that when if you think about an anchor, you let down your anchor on your boat, and no matter what the tides come, no matter whether a storm comes, it will hold you steady. It will keep you in that place so that you are not moved. That's the purpose of an anchor. And so that's what my faith has done for me. So in spite of the laundry list of things that I have been through in this life, breast cancer just being one of the major things, one of the major things that has happened in my life. Um, that has been my main anchor. Not only that, I have really focused on, or I should say this, I have a core value of lifelong learning.
mm,
So when things don't work out, or even when they do, I'm always reflecting on what happened and asking, what can I take away from this? What can I learn from this situation? So, especially when things go awry, I'm taking a look and say, okay, like what lesson can I take away from this so that I don't have this happen again? If I can avoid it, is there anything that I can do to prevent it? Because sometimes things aren't preventable.
mm.
They just aren't. It just happens. But there many of the things that happen to us are preventable. And so I look at it like, all right, what can I put in place? So having that reflective process to ask yourself, what could I learn here? What could I have done differently? How can I do it better next time? Should this situation arise again? And then thirdly, allowing space for fun and adventure.
Mm,
As we grow up, as we become into adulthood, we get weighted down by the pressures of life, bills and responsibilities and accountabilities and whatnot, to the point where oftentimes we forget how to have fun.
yeah.
And so I have really tried to incorporate some sort of adventure into my regular routine so that I can, the dancing you mentioned, from my bio, salsa and bachata dancing, Latin dancing is one of those things. And I specifically that because I love, music, right? Who doesn't love music? You have music, even without words, it makes the rhythms make you move your body and you can kind of escape, if you will, from kind of what's happening in your life. They help to elevate your mood. They can help to communicate your mood. Uh,
Right.
and so you've got the music aspect of it. And then it's social, right? In Latin dancing, it's called social dancing. So you go to events and it doesn't matter if you came as a couple or not. Everyone kind of breaks off and dances with other people. And it's not a like he's hitting on her or she's hitting on him kind of thing. It's literally just about the dancing. So you get that social aspect of it. And then, the physicality, you're moving your body, you get a little exercise. So that's
So
why
people don't have phones?
no, I mean, they might have them like taking some video of somebody else for it, but no, you're on the dance floor and you are just having a good time. And so that's something that I incorporate into my regular schedule so that I can actually have that fun, have that adventure, and let loose, let my hair down, if you will. And I think we all could use a little bit more of that in our day to day life. So having some adventure, having that time of reflection, and then having an anchor in some sort of spiritual practice.
I absolutely love that you provided the example of lifelong learning as being a student of your own life instead of, the famous thing, the famous thing for Black women is, oh, I'm bored. I think I'll get another degree. You know? And you can just learn from your life. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you were to issue a challenge to the audience for their well-being, their resilience, their burnout recovery, is there something that you would want to challenge them individually or in their workplace culture to do?
I would say first, let me I want to share this quote that a dear friend of mine, it's her quote. And ever since she said it, I use it now. I give her credit though whenever I use it. But it is that your level of self care must match or exceed your level of stress. I'm going to say that again. Your
Wait,
level, your level of self care, your level of self care must match or exceed your level of stress. In order for you to, kind of keep burnout at bay. We don't want you to get there. We don't even want you to be in a place of overwhelm because that's kind of like the last rung on the ladder before you get into burnout. You want to catch that as early as possible. You want to preventative maintenance, right? Preventative maintenance. So my challenge to you is to carve out 15 minutes every day to do something just for you. It doesn't have to be anything super major. It could be simply instead of just grabbing your cup of coffee in the morning on the go, actually making a pot of coffee, having your coffee at home and sitting on your porch and savoring it. It could be to go for a brief walk for 15 minutes. We all can find 15 minutes in our day. Or maybe it's to pick up a physical book, right? Like an actual physical book, right? I'm not talking about a digital book. I'm talking about a real book. And you pick that up and, and read a book or take a hot bath. Tuesday night is my designated self-care night. I do an aromatherapy bath every Tuesday night and a mud mask. I have this whole routine, but find 15 minutes in every single day and make it non-negotiable that you do something just for you that's going to fill you up. You get to decide what that is. I can't tell you what's going to fill you. What works for me may not necessarily work for you. There's no one size fits all approach here. You got to find the thing that will light you up and that will refill your cup. And start with 15 minutes every day because you deserve it.
Beautiful. That's a really great way to make a step toward recovery and ensuring that you don't get to burnout. You've given us so many strategies, and I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to be your guest.
Yes, and until next time. Thank you everyone for tuning in today to Leadership Beyond Burnout. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. You can find us here every Thursday live at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific. And until next time, we'll see you later.